Welcome into episode 441 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Scott McLaughlin, and back from the Sunshine State, from the world of wizardry, Bridget Prue. Bridget, how are you?
I'm good, feeling magical. No, I'm exhausted. Honestly, it's one of those trips where you come back more tired than you left. When you walk I think I did 22,000 steps each day, just right around Hogwarts, just seeing the sights. And yeah, my feet hurt. My knee, I know I mentioned this a long time ago. I got ACL surgery right before the Bruins season. And it had been doing good. It had been doing great. But yeah, it was really in pain. Don't think I slept well. We had fun, though. I mean, it was one of those where you just cram as much as you can into a short amount of time. I was only gone for 3 days. So yeah, I'm exhausted. I need a vacation from the vacation.
Yeah, well, it doubles your step when they keep changing the staircases on you.
Yeah, I know. They just spin and then you don't know where you are. And yeah.
You end up face to face with the three-headed dog.
Yeah. No, you would love it, Scott. I know you're a Harry Potter. Actually, Brian, you are too, right?
Yeah, I've been there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was nice. I spilled a whole butterbeer on myself the first day, so that was good.
I remember my first butterbeer.
Yeah, it was good though. Delicious. The second one that I got, because the first one ended up on the ground.
Well, Bridget, welcome back. Scott and
Thank
I,
you.
obviously, we did a bit of a mailbag episode last time around, so we got to most of those. Scott, I don't know if any have trickled in since, and if somehow we can maybe get to them later in this episode. If not, we'll get to them next episode. But essentially, let's just get to our opening shifts. There's much to talk about regarding what's going on in the NHL playoffs right now, international hockey, and then there is some Bruins news or lack thereof that we can get to as well.
Bridget, you want to go first with the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was in Florida, so keeping a close eye on that Panthers-Toronto series, and it's been an entertaining series. I know Bruins fans don't have a rooting interest in their own team, and maybe they're finding it difficult to root for the Panthers, but the fact of the matter is that the Bruins are one Panthers win away from getting that pick upgraded from a second-round pick to a first-round pick for the Marchand trade. So there is something at stake, and it could end as soon as tonight. Was it tomorrow night?
Yeah, tonight. Friday night.
Yeah. So the Panthers are up in the series 3-2, and Toronto has not played well the last 2 games, right? So they started out the series strong, and then the Panthers do what the Panthers do, and they outmuscle and they make the good players for Toronto uncomfortable. And so I guess if you're a Bruins fan, you're turning on your TV tonight and you're rooting for Brad Marchand and the Florida Panthers. And by the way, he's had a good playoff series. He's already got 5 points in just the second round alone. So he is making a difference for Florida. If they win the cup, like, would you guys be, and I guess I'm asking this not just to you guys, but to the listeners, like, would people be just excited to see Marchand get another cup? And at least there's a little bit of that, like, happy ending for Marchand, at least, even though the Bruins season didn't go the way fans wanted. Marchand's such a fan favorite that I think people would be excited to see that, even if it is wearing a Panthers jersey.
Yeah, it's weird because at least we don't think this is like his last season. So even if they win, like, it's not a going out on top. He's gonna, whether it's re-signing with the Panthers or signing somewhere else, or even if you want to leave the door open to a Bruins return, it's like he has said he wants to play into his 40s, so he's gonna keep playing. So I don't know, like, it's not gonna have the same feel as, say, Ray Bourque, which people, a lot of fans were genuinely happy for him because he never won one here. And that was actually his last hurrah. He did go out on top. So I don't know, like, I'm not, as a media member, it's like I'm not as emotionally invested in that kind of stuff anymore. So I don't know how fans are going to really feel. Like, I get the sense that it's like almost lukewarm, where it's like, yeah, I'll be happy for Marchand, but because it's the Panthers, it's like I'm still not going to get too excited. Like, it was easy to root for the Colorado Avalanche. Like, that's Western Conference. It doesn't affect you at all. You had no history with them. So Yeah, like it's much different than that.
Yeah, because the Panthers are like the boogeyman for the Bruins the last few seasons. So it definitely is so against nature to root for them, but we'll be rooting for them tonight because first round draft pick, even though it will probably be a late first round draft pick and it's top 10 protected next year.
2020. It's top 10 protected in 2027.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
it would be unprotected in 2028.
It's one of those very delayed gratification things, even if they do get it, because it is not soon. And potentially could be 2028, right? So
yeah. And I will also note, like, officially they can't actually lock that in, even if the Panthers win tonight, because in theory, like if Marchand got hurt tonight and missed the rest of the playoffs, and the Panthers more than doubled their game total the rest of the way, like went all the way to the Stanley Cup final, Marchand could still end up under 50% of games played. So they will still need Marchand to play like a few more games to officially lock it in.
And hopefully he stays healthy. Do you guys have any other thoughts though on that? Or maybe we can get to it after opening shifts on that.
Yeah,
Toronto
let's circle back after.
All right.
Because I definitely have thoughts on that series, Mitch Marner, the playoffs as a whole. Yeah, so my opening shift is about a different tournament featuring professionals that people don't care about as much, but has some interest around here, and that is the World Championships, which are going on over in Sweden and Denmark. And I was watching the USA Norway game this week. Jeremey Swayman was starting for the US, and US was up 5-1 in that game in the third period and blew it. Swayman gave up 4 goals in the third period, ended up with 4 goals against on 17 shots, or 5 goals against on 17 shots total for the game. US did end up bouncing back to win in overtime. But I tweeted out, rough day for Swayman, because it was. Some of the goals were fairly soft. One was a breakaway, but it kind of just like slid slowly through his 5-hole. One, he got beat clean off the rush. Just didn't look very good, and that got a lot of reaction. I saw other people tweeting about it, and so I think it's worth discussing a bit, like how much to read into this. How do we feel about it? It's also worth noting Swayman did have a shutout in his first game over at World Championships. However, it was against Hungary, which if you can name forget the current roster, if you can name a single player from Hungary, period, I'll be amazed. He only faced 13 shots. So,
well, Victor Krum was Hungarian, wasn't he, Bridget? Scott?
No, I think he was Bulgarian.
Bulgarian. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was Bulgarian. Yeah.
The horntail was Hungarian.
That's right. That's right.
The dragon that Harry had to fight in a Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, I had to fight him this week, actually. It was crazy. But yeah, get your Quidditch teams right, Brian. Come on.
My bad.
But no, there's a kid from UMass Lowell, I think, on Hungary.
Yeah, you're right. That there is. Yeah, I think UMass Lowell had 2 from Hungary in recent years. So
yeah.
But yeah, that we can touch on what some of the other Bruins are doing in the World Championships, but Swayman's the big one. And on the one hand, like, it is concerning to me. On the other, I kind of view this as an extension of this season, where it's like, yep, you know what? We already knew he needed a reset this summer. That hasn't happened yet. He still needs it. So I don't know that I actually feel like any better or worse than I already did, honestly.
Oh, they better hope he resets, Scott. They better hope he resets.
There's literally there's no choice for any of them. Like, yeah, he needs to reset and be a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get to Swayman a bit, and Dan Locmelis over at World Juniors. World Championships. Sorry, World Championships this year. Doesn't it seem like the field is a little bit more stacked than your ordinary World Championship? I'm not sure if it's because the Olympics are coming up, but it just seems like a lot of NHL players who ordinarily NHL stars who may ordinarily, after they get eliminated from the NHL playoffs, they might just go home and rest for the summer. But anybody who has an opportunity to go there, if they're healthy, they appear to be going there, which is why I put a lot more weight in this year's tournament, maybe.
Yeah, I think that the Sidney Crosby of it all brings a lot of extra attention. Like he goes for the first time. Nathan McKinnon follows him. Marc-Andre Fleury follows him for one last hurrah. So like that really added quite a bit of star power.
Yeah, Canada certainly feels like a lot of times, not recently, but a lot of times those guys are in the playoffs. Like Crosby wouldn't be able to go until the end. Like, and there's been tournaments where he was in the playoffs and then they got knocked out and then he left. But like he's been using it that time to rest really as he's gotten older. And Marc-Andre Fleury is one of my favorites. So I like that we get the Crosby Fleury reunion. And then like the US has a lot of young stars, younger guys that are going to be bigger names. And it's nice to see that too.
Yeah, the Finns' top 4 or 5 players are all still playing together with the Dallas Stars. So the Finnish team is a little bit weaker, but that's because their players are still in the NHL playoffs. I just feel like if NHL players have been eliminated from playoff contention and they aren't injured, a lot of them, I think, we're trying to go over and play world championships. And I do think the Olympics coming up in February of 26 has something to do with that as well. Okay, so my opening shift is regarding the Boston Bruins head coaching vacancy, head coaching search. Of course, Scott, I think Tocchet signed after our last episode. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we last spoke and Rick Tocchet was still on the market, but he, of course, signs what I believe was a $5.25 million annual contract with the Philadelphia Flyers. Did the Bruins get outbid? Did they match it? I don't know if anybody really knows that. I think even if the Bruins did match that, I feel like Talk would have gone to Philadelphia anyway due to his history there.
I'm pretty, maybe not quite a report, but I'm pretty confident they did not offer him anything super close to what the Flyers did.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. Good speculation from Scott. And I Bridget, you trust Scott's word? I trust Scott's word. I trust Scott. Okay, so
it depends. Some days I do. Some days, like he's got a smirk on his face right now. So
you think he just totally lied just then? I don't know about that. No, I don't think so. I don't think he'd do that.
Nah, not lying. I would say educated guess.
Yeah. So anyway, Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts. Basically, I don't have the direct quote, guys, but it was something along the lines of people were asking who the Bruins have interviewed, and he more or less said, who haven't they interviewed? He said they've had about 15 interviews, and he rattled off a handful of names. But yeah, with Rick Tocchet gone, with Mike Sullivan off the market, Joel Quenneville was never really an option in Boston for PR reasons because they kind of already, had that nightmare a few years ago with the Mitch Miller stuff. It just seems like Marco Sturm could be a lead candidate. Misha Donskov, who's coaching in Dallas, could be a lead candidate. Jay Woodcroft is a name that we didn't really mention last episode, Scott, but you have mentioned him in the past. I know he's been on your mind. Those are 3 candidates right there. Beyond that, of course, you have Joe Sacco. Jay Leach, I think I saw a report from Elliot as well that he has been interviewing around the league.
Well, I know he interviewed in Boston. I don't know if he's been interviewing with other teams.
Sweeney even said he was interviewing for the Bruins job on not breakup day, but the day that we did the draft lottery.
I think he may have mentioned it on Spit and Chicklets Game Notes podcast that Leach may have interviewed around. But in any event, the Bruins have a vacancy.
I mean, like I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle interviewed him. I mean, he was already an assistant coach there.
Well, the thing is, whoever the Bruins hire, right? We've talked about it. It's your wish, Scott, that whoever the Bruins hires a head coach, he has a say in picking his assistant coaching staff. Now, you look at the Bruins coaching staff right now. Chris Kelly has been the Bruins assistant coach for 4 years under 3 different head coaches. Bruce Cassidy, Jim Montgomery, interim head coach Joe Sacco. So that just tells you that even when there's some head coaching turnover, Chris Kelly has kind of remained safe. We'll see if that continues. If the Bruins aren't going to hire Jay Leach or Joe Sacco, and Jay Leach maybe knows that, maybe he sees the writing on the wall and that's why he's interviewing around. Of course, there's still the Joe Sacco assistant coaching vacancy that he left when he took over Jim Montgomery's post that the Bruins still have to replace. So I'm not really sure if the Bruins are going to be replacing a total new staff of coaches, a head coach and 3 assistants, or if it's going to be a combination of that. But in any event, what do you guys make of the Bruins still without a head coach and some of the names you hear floating around out there?
Yeah, I think it's clear that they're casting a wide net, which is kind of what we thought from the start. It's why I wasn't really wasn't that surprised that they didn't like immediately pounce at the chance to hire Mike Sullivan. Because the Rangers prioritized him, didn't even bother interviewing anyone. And I just don't think the Bruins were willing to really do that for anyone. I think they wanted to look around, talk to a lot of people, interview a lot of people, and go through options. And I think they're still doing that. Bridget referenced draft lottery night. Sweeney said at that point it had just been mostly phone calls, kind of just touching base. I believe since then they've had Zoom interviews, and then other than maybe Leach and Sacco, I don't know if they've had anyone in for an in-person interview yet. So that'd be the next step. That's probably after they narrow down their list and maybe bring in the last, 3 or 4 finalists for in-person interviews. So yeah, obviously, Sweeney said they're looking for guys with NHL exposure, and it seems like that is very much a common theme across all these guys. They've all at least been assistant coaches in the NHL. Some of them head coaches. Friedman also mentioned 2 Tampa Bay Lightning assistants, Jeff Blashill and Jeff Halpern. Blashill has been a head coach in Detroit with the Red Wings. Halpern has not been an NHL head coach yet, but he has been an assistant in Tampa since 2018 or 19. So yeah, like clearly looking at a lot of people, and I still think unless they are just like waiting on a Misha Donskov or something and Dallas keeps going, I feel like this could wrap up in the next couple weeks, but
Really?
but maybe not. Like if there's someone that they're waiting on, then it might drag on longer.
I feel like we're still in the beginning stages of this. I think that if they're going to this like casting a wide net, which makes a lot of sense for them, I think that's what they should be doing. Cast a wide net, interview. If they're at 15 now, they probably get up to 20. In terms of maybe some of it's more informal, some of it's more serious, but I would be surprised if there's a guy on their list that is still an assistant coach for one of these playoffs teams that they're not just going to wait, because I don't think they're going to push forward without kind of looking in every corner.
Yeah. Well, I guess it comes down to like, have they fallen in love with anyone they've talked to already? And does that person potentially get hired elsewhere? Like say they really like Jay Woodcroft or Marco Sturm. They're like, that's our leader in the clubhouse. That's the guy we want. And yeah, maybe in a perfect world, they'd like to wait and talk to Donskov or Mitch Love. Well, they can talk to Mitch Love now because the Capitals are out. Okay, say they might want to wait and talk to those guys. Well, what if, I don't know, Seattle or Pittsburgh or whoever swoops in and says, you know what, Woodcroft's our guy, and all of a sudden they're like now the Bruins have to act. Like now either like you go after that guy or you don't, and you miss out on a candidate you potentially liked.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, you have to at some point try to steal a guy if you think they might go elsewhere. And we've talked about that with maybe letting some of the guys go off the board that would have been good fits, but it sounds like both Tocchet and Sullivan kind of got deals they couldn't refuse. So hard to get in on that bidding if that's who you wanted, because you really weren't in the price range potentially. So I'm excited to hear the new names though. I don't know what you guys like when you hear some of these new names being added, especially because maybe we didn't think of them. because maybe we thought of maybe the obvious rather than some of these wider. When you get to a list of 15, there's going to be names on it that you weren't necessarily expecting. Was there anyone that perked your interest besides guys that like Sturm, who we spent a chunk of an episode talking about?
Well, I mean, I think again, using Don Sweeney's verbiage, which is NHL exposure. Okay, I mean, I've had people ask me about certain coaches that are in junior hockey and their resume just doesn't have pro coaching experience, whether it's even the AHL or certainly the NHL. So because Sweeney said that, I have to kind of keep my opinion to the people that fit his parameters. And I do think Misha Donskov has a very impressive track record throughout his time in the NHL. He's been in various roles in the NHL since the year 2000. I mean, he's been a video coach. He's been a director of player hockey operations. He's been an assistant coach. He's been essentially everything but a head coach. He's been a team consultant, and he's been a part of. He had a head influence in the Vegas Golden Knights during their start in the NHL and through their Stanley Cup win. So he's definitely interesting. I think Marco Sturm is another very interesting candidate. Like I think Marco Sturm would be great. Mitch Love. Somebody like that. I don't have a ton of information on a lot of these non NHL head coaches in the past. You just don't know much about them. They're kind of in the shadows. So I'd be lying if I said I have a ton of info on a lot of these candidates. I think Jay Woodcroft, he only had a short time coaching the Edmonton Oilers. I think he got hired in the middle of the 21-22 season, and he got fired in, I think, the beginning of the 22-23. It was only like a just under 2-year calendar year stretch. I think he was their coach or something like that.
Yeah, he took over February of 22. They get to the conference finals. He signs an extension. 22-23, he's there the full season. 109 points. Second round, they get knocked out by Vegas. Vegas goes on to win the cup. And then the next season, 23-24, Oilers got off to a horrible start, 3-9-1, and he gets fired in, November. But yeah, he is definitely someone who intrigues me, and it's why I've brought him up before. Is like I think you see this a lot. You saw it with Bruce Cassidy, even though he had a long gap between jobs. I think coaches learn a lot between that first and second NHL opportunity. Like that second time around, now they have a much better feel for what didn't work, where they needed to improve and grow. Sometimes they immediately get another job, but sometimes there's time to take a step back and self-reflect and evaluate and learn stuff. Like Bruce Cassidy, like I said, had a long time he had like 10 years to reflect and work in different roles.
Go Sacco.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, a little different. Obviously, he got thrown into a tough situation here.
But he was formerly a head coach and then was an assistant coach for a very long time in between.
Yeah, I guess like we don't know if Joe Sacco grew into a much better coach yet, because it's hard to judge him on this season. Obviously, the team didn't do well.
Well, I do remember when he first took over, one of the questions in the press conference after Montgomery got fired was, what do you know now that you didn't know the first time that you were a head coach? And he talked about the difference of getting to personally know the players and, basically being more involved personally with people, rather than kind of just being like coaching from a distance, almost like getting more personal. And, I don't know. He had a few answers about it. I'm sure he's changed because it was such a long time. There's one person I wanted to bring up that hasn't been mentioned, and
Bridget, before you do it, just to wrap up my thoughts on Woodcroft, like, because I mentioned in like growing from first to second NHL job, like Woodcroft did an interview with Daily Faceoff about a month ago in April and talked about exactly that. Like he hasn't had officially a job since the Oilers fired him, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago at this point. But he basically said he's like gone kind of all over the world. He stopped by different NHL training camps. He's been over to Europe, basically just to observe and learn and talk to other coaches and like pick their brains. Which I like hearing. Like that's you might look at him and say like, well, why has he gone a year and a half without a job? But I like hearing that basically it was like partly intentional by him to take this time to like step back and try to learn more than he knew 2 years ago.
He's been a part of winning teams too. Like he was a video coach in the late 2000s with the Detroit Red Wings, and they won a Stanley Cup, went to a Stanley Cup final. Red Wings were obviously very good back then. And he was an assistant coach, I believe, with the San Jose Sharks after that stretch, in like maybe like 2009, 10, 11, something like that. And that was obviously when the Sharks were very good. And they never got over the hump, but they were one of the league's best teams year in, year out. And then obviously he ended up being an assistant coach in Edmonton through their lows and their highs before getting that chance as a head coach.
Yeah, and a head coach in the AHL with the Bakersfield Condors, the Edmonton's affiliate.
So the person that I was going to say that we haven't heard, which is a little bit, I'll say it's a little bit surprising because this is someone that is in the Bruins' own organization and their own pipeline, but he's also someone that does not have NHL coaching experience, is Ryan Mougenel. I feel like we have not heard his name come up really at all. It wasn't in the Friedman report, though. Could he have been one of the 15 names? Sure. But he doesn't fit that criteria for them. I mean, AHL experience, he's had a lot of AHL coaching experience. He's been in the AHL for several years, but he never as a player was in the NHL, and he's never been an NHL coach. And I don't believe he's ever been an NHL assistant coach either. So I think maybe that qualification, they're just going to overlook him potentially. If they're really strictly going to be going by that. But Ryan Mougenel is somebody who has been the Providence Bruins head coach and has seen some of the younger guys that might be coming up. What do you guys think? Should he be in like top consideration? Should he be in any consideration? Do you think they'd be maybe overlooking him if they haven't interviewed him or considered him for the job?
Again, I'm just going to keep going back to what you just mentioned, Bridget, and that's the parameters that Don Sweeney was on record saying. Now, why did he say that? Why does he feel that way? If he felt as though, and maybe Ryan Mougenel is an amazing candidate and would be the best man for the job, but I'm wondering why Don Sweeney was. I mean, he was transparent in your question, Bridget, and if they felt as though that Mougenel was one of their lead candidates or could or should be, I don't know if he would have said that or felt that way. So I just can't get past that qualification that they seem to have.
Yeah, and also when he was asked after the draft lottery, like where he was in the coaching search, he mentioned Sacco and Leach, and he did not mention Mougenel. So
did not mention Chris Kelly either, which is less surprising. But I know some fans thought maybe Kelly would be in the running. So. Yeah, I think it's all telling. Sweeney's parameters about NHL exposure, and then not, only mentioning Sacco and Leach by name. Like, it tells me that Mougenel's probably not a candidate. And now look, maybe Sweeney just, slipped and forgot to mention him, and he actually is interviewing. I guess that's possible, but if not, then it tells me that they might not think he's ready for whatever reason. Maybe they think, he does need some NHL assistant coaching experience or whatever it might be, or just they see how he works and they think that's a good AHL coach, but we don't think it would translate to the NHL. Like there could be a lot of reasons for it, but I'm with Brian. Like I would just keep coming back to, Sweeney made it a point to say that NHL exposure was important, and Mougenel doesn't have it.
Now, I also want to make a quick note here because Ken Holland, who is the new GM of the Los Angeles Kings, made a comment that their head coach wasn't going anywhere. So if anybody out there was curious if Marco Sturm was going to get a promotion in LA, doesn't seem to be the case. So that gives Marco Sturm incentive if he's craving an NHL head coaching opportunity to, of course, strongly consider Boston. And this gets me to a question I have for you guys, which is, do you have a personal preference between any of these candidates? And when I ask Bruins fans who they would prefer, it's either Misha Donskov or Marco Sturm. Now, one of them can be hired theoretically ASAP, and the other one would have to wait until Dallas's fate is sealed this season. And I do feel like there's some validity to hiring your head coach sooner rather than later, because maybe they want their head coach to not be the deciding factor, because you hire scouts for that, and then you have the assistant general manager and the general manager when it comes to the draft. But do they want the head coach to maybe have at least an opinion as the Bruins get closer to the draft?
Well, I think even more important is free agency starting 3 days later.
That's where I was gonna go.
Yeah, like you wanna know what your coach's system is and what kind of players are gonna fit in it. So that's why I kind of feel like if the Stars win the series, now they lost a closeout game Thursday night, so that series is going to a game 6 coming up on Saturday night. I almost feel like if the Stars end up in the Stanley Cup final, I don't know if the Bruins are waiting that long. I just don't know if they're waiting until June 20th or 22nd to make a hire, when then you have the draft on the 26th and free agency on July 1st. It becomes a really tight turnaround. So I think they would probably act sooner. And so as far as my preference, there's a bunch of these candidates I like. Obviously, I like Donskov. I like Woodcroft. I'm intrigued by Blashill. He's another guy, second opportunity. He was not set up for success in his first opportunity. The Red Wings were. He takes over the Red Wings really as their downswing begins. They were forget rebuilding. They were on the way down. Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg were retiring, and that was just kind of a mess. So it's not surprising that he didn't have any success in terms of wins, losses there. My number one candidate, though, would be Marco Sturm. I think he fits the most of what would interest me. AHL head coaching experience, NHL assistant coaching experience, has been part of a good organization, obviously one that can't figure out how to get past the Edmonton Oilers, but nonetheless is consistently there. I like what he did with the German national team. I like that, he's a little younger and played not too long ago. I think he's smart. I think he brings a little bit of kind of grittiness and old school attitude in a younger face, younger voice, maybe newer approach to go along with that. So I'm really intrigued by Marco Sturm, and I think if I had to power rank them right now, he'd be my number one.
And I feel like you're not alone in that for a few reasons. One, he's a former Bruin, so that obviously makes some fans more, maybe a little nostalgic and want to see him back in the organization. But I think that people don't want retreads. They would rather, the consensus or the common theme that I've been seeing among Bruins fans is that they would rather someone newer with fresher ideas, younger, than somebody who's been a coach, maybe a few other stops and has been fired a few times and has the higher amount of NHL experience, but maybe they feel like the message is stale. And so going for a younger candidate that has newer ideas seems to be appealing to a lot of people as they watch the Bruins search for their next head coach.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, I've been on Sturm for a little bit now. I've really liked the idea of him being the next head coach for all the reasons you guys have mentioned. I think, yeah, I just think, like I said, getting Donskov is a very, very intriguing candidate to me. But I do think that timing is of the essence. I mentioned the draft. Scott mentions free agency, which is very important to me. And I think that for the reason that Scott said, you want to know how your team is how they want to play. And I also think that prospective UFAs, like, they look at everything when they're balancing, where do I want to go? Of course, money is number one, right? But then it's like, okay, what's the fit? How does my family feel about that region of the United States or Canada? What's the direction of the team? Who's their head coach? Do I know their head coach? Do I know their assistant coach? Like, are there relationships there that I would like over some other options if the money's all equal? So I just think that's something to consider too. Having good people in place, people can see that as far in advance as they can before decisions are made. I think that's beneficial for the team.
Well, Donskov just coached Mitch Marner at Four Nations. So I don't know, maybe that helps you get Marner.
Well, that's a good
that
segue.
can transition
Yeah, I was gonna say,
that'll transition into some of the thoughts on the Toronto Florida series, because it has not been a series that Marner has increased his value.
no, well, I mean, he was awful in Game 5. Him and Matthews in particular. Marner had just an completely inexcusable turnover. Leafs were down 2-0. They were going to lose that game no matter what, but Marner blind backhand pass into the neutral zone, picked off, turned up ice for a goal to make it 3-0. Like, that was really the pin in the balloon that just sealed it for the night. There was a great article that Justin Bourne wrote for Sportsnet. Basically on like I forget, don't have it up. I think he called like the absence of magic or something, talking about Marner and Matthews. And it was like,
it's the absence of greatness.
Yeah, that was it.
Scott's got Harry Potter on his mind.
Yeah, true. Yeah, there's no absence of magic where Bridget was. But like it put into words, I think, a lot of what I felt about Marner and Matthews, because I know it's really easy to just say like, oh, because they keep losing the first or second round, like they just stink, or they fall on their face in the playoffs, or they're bad in the playoffs. And I often have not really felt that way. Like, when you watch them, I'm like, they're not bad. Other night aside, Game 5, they were bad. Generally, even in the series, like games 1 and 2, Mitch Marner was good. But what they aren't is exactly what Justin Bourne puts his finger on, which is they're not great. Like, they don't take over the way that you see Mikko Rantanen taking over, or you've seen Nathan McKinnon take over, or Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Like, they're not doing that, and they're making too much money, or in Marner's case, wants to make that kind of money. He wants to make more money than Mikko Rantanen. It's like, well, with that comes the expectation of being great, of taking over, of making something special happen. And they don't do that. And like, that's it. If Toronto goes down tonight in Game 6, it's going to absolutely be a fair question for every team that's interested in Mitch Marner in free agency, including potentially the Boston Bruins. And I keep grappling with this in my head, because on like, that is all fair. And when people say like, like, to use the kind of like new slang, like Mitch Marner doesn't have that dog in him, it's like, I think that's fair. Like, he hasn't done anything to disprove that. And committing 7 years and $13 million a year to someone like that is scary. And it is. And then on the other hand, like, my other side of my brain is saying, but the Bruins so desperately need stars and need offensive help, and he's the best player out there, and he can make the single biggest difference to your offense versus anyone else you'd be able to add this summer. And I'm like, kind of, like beggars can't be choosers. And right now the Bruins are beggars. And so you can say like, yeah, you don't want to give that kind of contract to Mitch Marner. And it's like, okay, then you save your money and what? Wait and hope that some better option presents itself at some point, that Jack Eichel doesn't extend in Vegas and hits the market next year, or that Brady Tkachuk demands a trade out of Ottawa. Like, what do you know what I mean? Like what's the backup?
Off the sheet
Like,
nice.
what else are you doing?
Off the sheet nice. That's what people want. Off the sheet nice.
Okay, Matthew Nice is a really good second liner who can move up to the first line. He's not a 100-point scorer. He's not a star.
But he's got that dog in him. He's got
yeah.
That
Look,
dog.
I like Matthew Nice. Like I'd offer sheet him, sure, but I still think you need much more offensive help beyond that.
Yeah, I think ultimately, hopefully if the Leafs go down like this, hopefully it drops Marner's price, right? The cost to acquire him. At the end of the day, I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, he's a poor playoff performer and he's soft and all this," and it's like, okay, well, if you're the Bruins right now, can you get to the playoffs first? And how do you do that? Like they don't have they right now. To your point, Scott, they need some impact forwards, at least one more high impact forward, if they even want to make the playoffs. Because just relying on McAvoy and Lindholm getting back to health and a better season from Elias Lindholm, that's not going to do it. Like this team still needs that help up front. And when it comes to Marner, I think Toronto is. It's a bad mix. It's the combination of Matthews, Nylander, and Marner. When your three best players are collectively as soft as they are when the going gets tough and their will doesn't match their skill when they're playing the big boys at this time of year, when their top three players are like that combined, you get what you've gotten in Toronto for the last almost full decade. But if Mitch Marner is on a team where he's one of the only softer high-end forwards, and he's complemented by more toughness and sandpaper with skill. Or I would say the same thing about William Nylander. Like if William Nylander went somewhere else, like I just think the three of them together, it's too much softness. But you can have a skilled soft forward and win. I mean, it happens all the time. So whether that's Boston or somewhere else, I have no doubt that Mitch Marner can go somewhere else and have playoff success, or William Nylander can go somewhere else and have playoff success. It's the combination of the three of them. So in
the conference that Toronto's in and not the Bruins are in, I should say in the division that they're in, you're running up against the Florida Panthers, who know how to play against guys like that, like the skilled guys that they know that they can get them off their game. And you'd be bringing a guy in Mitch Marner. No, and I guess as the Bruins, you can't do this now. It feels like this is what they did last offseason, was try to build a team specifically with the Florida Panthers in mind. Now you have to build a team with just making the playoffs in mind. But you're bringing in a guy that maybe doesn't hold up against Florida. And if that's the playoff opponent in the first round, again, say they make the playoffs and it's Florida again in the first round, does that help you in that series? And I'm sure the answer is yes, from a skill standpoint, but who knows if it's the same kind of result as we saw in Game 5 when the going got tough. So it's very obvious that Marner is still the clear number one target in free agency. As if you're looking for the highest end offensive player, he's still that guy. But hey, yeah, maybe other teams say we're not as interested. Maybe the price changes. I don't know. I just feel like he still has enough of a step above the rest that he's going to be sought after pretty highly.
Yeah, he absolutely will. He absolutely will, despite how people feel about him online, whether it's Maple Leafs fans or fans around the league. Someone's going to offer him some money because he's going to help their team. David Pastrnak was responsible for 47% of Boston's offense last year. Or I should say he had a point on 47% of the total offense last year. Mitch Marner comes in next year. Now you have at least 200 to 210 points between your two top right wingers right then and there. Now, look, there's other ways you can go if Marner's not the one, because the Bruins might want Marner and pursue him and give it their best effort, and he might choose somewhere else. So there are other avenues the Bruins can go. People might say, listening to this conversation, we don't want somebody like Mitch Marner. We want somebody that has the heartbeat of the Florida Panthers. Let's bring in Sam Bennett. But the problem is right now is Sam Bennett does not really fit with this current Bruins roster, because the Bruins roster right now is littered with 2C talent. Elias Lindholm is a 2C talent. Pavel Zacha, despite the fact that he'll probably play left wing next year, is a 2C talent. Casey Middlestad is a 2C talent. Now, bringing in Sam Bennett to all those, with all those names, it's too much redundancy, despite the difference in their play styles. But if the Bruins could look at a potential movable top 6 contract, and that is Pavel Zacha and or Casey Middlestad, those are two players on the Bruins current roster where they have pretty affordable contracts for a team. I think Pavel Zacha is 4.75, I think, and I think that Casey Middlestad is 5.25, or maybe it's something like that. And they both have a modified no trade clause of like 8 or 9 teams. So could the Bruins theoretically move one of those players, free up a roster spot, maybe some cap space, and now you can bring in a Sam Bennett because there's not so much redundancy, and now you bring in Sam Bennett for $6+ million, and maybe you get an Ehlers or a Besser or somebody else in free agency. And so instead of going all for Mitch Marner, you're kind of playing some roster gymnastics to maybe fit in a Sam Bennett, and then you get another top 6 win to go along with him, as opposed to the one big prize. There's other ways the Bruins can go if they get creative and execute. I don't know if they're willing to. I don't know if they can. But it's not Marner or bust for the Bruins. But I'm curious if they do try to look at at least one movable top 6 contract right now and try to do something there, because there does feel like there's a bit of redundancy with some light forwards that kind of have 2C potential.
Yeah, Zacha's 4.75, signed for 2 more years. Middlestad's 5.75, signed for 2 more years. Yeah, I mean, I wonder how movable Middlestad even it. Like, look, if you want to get rid of him, you can. I don't know that you're getting much value in return. It might just be someone out there says, yeah, sure, we'll take the contract on, but all you're getting is a 4th round pick.
But if that's their goal, Scott, is to try to open up that roster spot in that cap space to maybe bring in a Bennett, like if the Bruins might be willing to sacrifice a return if they know that it's going to get them what they're really looking for.
For sure.
And look, that trade too, in the Middlestad trade, it was for Charlie Coyle. It was Charlie Coyle in a 2nd round pick for Charlie Coyle's 2nd round pick and Will Zellers, who we talked about Will Zellers a little bit, and that's when Middlestad came over too, in exchange for Coyle. But I don't really know what they're thinking in terms of like the active roster player there, because, and I'm not trying to be mean to Casey Middlestad, but it didn't look like what Don Sweeney had said he had wanted prior in free agency. Like, I just don't feel like Middlestad fit the type of player that the Bruins were looking for necessarily. And then like you get Zellers and you get what?
Well, he fit what they felt they needed to change to, because obviously what they targeted free agency produced a bad team that wasn't going anywhere. So, I think
but what about
midstream, they felt like they needed someone with more offensive creativity and the ability to transport the puck through the center of the ice. And they
wanted
think Middlestad can do that. But then they gave him Cole Koepke and Vinny Lettieri as wingers. So yeah, I mean, look, true. Like Casey Middlestad didn't look like a fit, but I don't know how do you evaluate someone as a potential 2C when you're playing them with AHLers or 4th
Well, but what I meant was that Sweeney has said he wanted guys that aren't afraid to shoot, like shot first, and that's Middlestad's not like a finisher on a line. He's a passer. He's a playmaker. So
yeah, you got to
you
get him
can't have-
finishers. Like you got to put wingers
Yeah.
on his line that can shoot, and that's not Cole Koepke and Vinny Lettieri.
Obviously not. No, that roster, we're going to look back on that roster the last few weeks of the season and go, what the heck was that? I forgot about this crazy combination of people with Brian's guy, Hoosie.
Yeah, I have some of the line charts from like some of those games on the stretch still just like stacked up on my desk. And I'm like, I'm going to save these things because at like some point in like 2028, I'm going to tweet one out and be like, do you guys remember this?
Yeah. Yeah, I got this was from the last game of the season. This was a beautiful, wonderful line chart with Koepke, Lettieri, Lysell, Lauko, Mitten, Huznadinov, Farinacci, Yoki Haru, Brunette.
Yeah.
It's just
Brunet.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the Bruins top 6 right now, guys, and to be honest with you, it's a top 5 because their roster right now, your top 5 forwards are Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak, Morgan Geekie, Pavel Zacha, and Casey Middlestad. Right now, your top internal option to be second line right wing would probably be Matt Patra, and so but that spot is vacant. So right now they don't even have a full top 6, and the top 6 that they do have is not. It just isn't the. Not that they have to be the heaviest, but there's just a little too much lightness there. There's just a little too much lightness and softness there. And so that's why I look at the Bruins and I say, I'm sure they want Mitch Marner just like everybody else, but I could see them really wanting Sam Bennett. And I don't see them fitting in Sam Bennett with this current roster for the reasons I said. So that's why I'm curious if they try to move one of those contracts. I'm just curious with the intention of trying to open up space in a spot for Sam Bennett. I'm not saying they're doing it, but there's a lot of options. Everybody's talking about Marner and Nikolai Ehlers, and that's great. But I still look at up the middle right now, and it's just soft. I mean, Fraser Mitten, I think, won't be a soft player when he hits his stride, but he's just still too young. I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot to hash out over the next couple of months. I'm fascinated to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I like the idea of adding Bennett. Like, the cheapness aside and how much Bruins fans hate him, like you'd love him in 2 weeks of him being here because of the way he plays, because now he'd be your guy. And I do think you see him step up in the playoffs, not just with physical after the whistle occasional dirty hits or rabbit punches, but with big goals and big plays and being around the net. Yeah, like it's a playoff style. It's a winning style. I just worried someone's going to drastically overpay him because of that playoff reputation. I've made this point before. This season was his first 50-point season, and he's had Matthew Tkachuk as his right wing for a few years now. So if you're going to plug him into a second line that doesn't have a Matthew Tkachuk, what is Sam Bennett? And I think that's a really fair question. Yeah, he's still going to bring the physicality, the grit, all that, the attitude, be a tone setter. But if he's putting up 40 points a year and you just paid him $8.5, $9 million a year, like, I don't care, how many guys he rabbit punches or hits from behind. Like, you're going to be like, why are we paying him that much? Like it won't take long for if you bring in Sam Bennett and he can't do what he does in Florida because he isn't surrounded by as many stars. Like I think people will turn on him pretty quickly, and you might regret that contract pretty quickly.
Yeah, but if it's at the expense of, like I said, if people are seeing Casey Middlestad go out the door and you bring in Bennett, or like I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not even like arguing against that. Like I'll do that in a heartbeat. I mean, if Sam, chances are if you sign Sam Bennett, that's your biggest signing this offseason. So on a team that needs significant offensive help, your biggest signing to improve your offense, in theory, is someone who, to an extent, relies on Matthew Tkachuk to drive a lot of the current line that he plays on.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I just don't think I don't think Bruins fans will look at Bennett as this major offensive producer that they're getting. I think they'll look at him as someone who's going to put guys through the boards and play the right way every shift, which he doesn't need people around him to do. But at the same time, like I'm not even dismissing what you're saying. I'm just,
I know. I'm like the Bruins need scoring though.
I know.
Someone's got to create some offense and put.
I'm certainly not here saying that the Bruins go out and get Sam Bennett and only Sam Bennett. And I'm just saying, I can see the Bruins looking at him and saying, we need him and we'll do whatever it takes to get him, and that it wouldn't be their only ad. Maybe they would go out and try to find a cheaper winger, obviously, because at that point, that has top 6 upside. And there are those guys out there besides Ehlers and Marner that do play top 6 roles in the NHL right now that are projected between $4 and $6 million in free agency. Now, Sam Bennett right now is projected 6.6, I think. I don't look at that as an astronomical contract for what he does. He's only 28 years old. Now, granted, he's an old 28 because of the way he plays. But, I mean, there are, I don't have the numbers, the contracts in front of me because it's a massive Excel sheet. But, I mean, if the Bruins lose out on Marner, they're going to have to get creative. And maybe it's just Nikolai Ehlers. Maybe it's Brock Besser. People are afraid of bringing in Brock Besser. Okay. Well, then Andrei Kuzmenko is a guy in LA who is projected to make, I think, 4 and change. Maybe you take a chance on him. Maybe they take a flyer on an older Patrick Kane, or maybe maybe they try to supplement some top 6 talent that isn't going to be the big bucks if they go after it, Bennett. But like I said, I just think there's a lot of ways the Bruins can go, and it just probably depends on who signs where, obviously.
You know what's something that you touched on a little bit, but something I've started to think about as a possibility, because it wouldn't seem to make sense for this team, but like, say you come to the conclusion that you don't want to be the team that gives Mitch Marner that kind of contract because you don't like the way he's playing right now, and you don't want to be the one that drastically overpays Sam Bennett, and maybe you're not totally in love with Nick Ehlers or Brock Besser. Do you like, if that's the case, do you become more open to, hey, can we give one of these veteran free agents big money short term? Like, does that make any sense to you guys? Like, say it was Tavares, and again, I don't even know what these guys are going to be looking for, or who's even going to be open to shorter term deals. Like this AFP Analytics, Brian, that you've referenced, like they have John Tavares projected at 3 years, $7.9 million. Now, again, like if Toronto loses tonight, they're probably more open to kind of just blowing things up and letting guys leave. Like, I start to at least consider something like that, where it's like, you know what, the 6 or 7 year guy that I was hoping, in their mid to late 20s that I'd love to sign isn't really there. Maybe we do 3 years of John Tavares, plug him in as first line center. It's not a long-term commitment. And like, I don't know. It's kind of a developing take for me. Like, I'm not there yet because signing guys in their mid 30s doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense for the Bruins, but I don't know. Maybe it's better than committing 7 years to someone that you might not actually be in love with.
Yeah, I hadn't really even considered that as an option, probably because it feels like it would be like plan F, like, like A, B, C, D, E, like, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like he's at the point where, like, I don't know how many years they offered Brad Marchand, like, or how many years that Tavares would want. So, like, if they weren't willing to offer somebody that's been here the whole time a big, longer contract, then does that make sense to do to Tavares? I don't know.
Yeah, all I know is that the Bruins, they're going to be one of many teams probably trying to go for Marner. I don't think it's likely they get him, and I know that the Bruins ownership and Bruins management are going to go out there and they're going to try to have some significant free agent acquisitions or trade acquisitions because they know that their asses are on the line and they know that the city of Boston is all over them and they don't want a repeat of last year if they can help it. So if it's not Marner, like, again, maybe they go after Sam Bennett and then he's their big signing, like Scott says. And then they say, you know what? maybe we will take a chance on Patrick Kane for 1 year at $3.5 million, which is what he's projected. I mean, like he had, I think, almost 60 points in 70 something games for the Red Wings last year. Like it's better than what the Bruins have had. And I don't know. There's a lot of ways they can go. I do want to quickly switch gears to World Championships if we can. And I want to touch on Jeremy Swayman because Scott brought him up. The Bruins better pray that last year was an anomaly, that last game in World Championships was an anomaly, and that Jeremy Swayman becomes the goalie that they thought he was. Because I'll tell you right now, to have him on the books the way that they do right now, he's not a very enticing trade candidate for teams around the league as we sit here today. If he struggles out of the gate and struggles into next season, then the Bruins decide, okay, maybe now we want to see if we can trade him before his trade protection kicks in, his no movement clause kicks in after this season. Good luck trading him to anybody then with that contract. And now you're stuck with them, and you're just stuck with him on the books, hoping eventually he figures it out and that he doesn't become a buyout player at some point. Because right now they are in dangerous waters with Jeremy Swayman because the player has not been giving people much confidence, this past calendar year at all.
Yeah, like I was kind of touching on before, he didn't look good in this game against Norway. Now let's see what happens the rest of World Championships. It doesn't really change anything for me in terms of how I already felt, which is that he needs a big summer. He needs to reset. He needs to get right, and bounce back. And like that is still the case. And I guess you might have hoped that, okay, maybe taking a few weeks off and then go to World Championships. Hey, maybe he performs well there, and now he has something to feel good about going into the summer. But like if that doesn't happen, say he continues to just be okay or it struggles in however many more games he plays there, like to me it would just kind of reinforce that, like, yeah, he needs that reset this summer. Like this is just a continuation of where he left off with the Bruins. Now I will say another factor here, or another angle to this, is the goalie he's splitting time with at World Championships is Joey Decord, who, by the way, so far has also had, I think, one good game, one rough game, but could be the guy who's closest to maybe passing Swayman for a spot in the Olympic team, which, if you're Swayman and you're going to play for Team USA at the World Championships, you're hoping it goes well and you kind of cement your spot on the Olympic team and give all the USA hockey brass reason to be like, okay, yeah, we still like this guy. We want him around. Say like Swayman's next game is another rough one and Joey Decord goes out and has a shutout. Like now all of a sudden it's like Swayman might be in danger of, I think he might already have been with the way the season went. But now, like, if you're getting this head-to-head competition, it kind of magnifies it, where, it's almost like if he doesn't play well, going to World Championships might actually end up hurting him, not just in terms of from the Bruins perspective, but in terms of USA Hockey evaluating him and their Olympic decisions.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like for the most of the time I think of World Championships as like relatively low stakes. Like it's for pride, it's for your own like fun and the joy of playing for your country. But when you look
for us in North America, in North America, the Europeans, it's big time.
Well, so but even so, like what I mean is, like, obviously David Pastrnak takes it really seriously, right? But it's not like,
by the way, leading scorer in the tournament as of Friday morning.
And he's always been good, right? Like they won last year, and he's this is like one of his big events, and he used to love going and playing with Krejci and Yager and like some of the guys that he looked up to, and now he's that guy. But what I mean is that you're only with that team for such a short amount of time. Like, it's not like an NHL season. It's like, it's lower stakes in that you're putting a team together quickly. They really enjoy it. They have fun. It's not like they have like a big contract they're trying to live up to or anything like that. But for Swayman, it seems to be pretty important, and it is higher stakes because of the potential of missing out on playing for your country, and getting past, and that there's still certainly pressure on him to perform well. And I have so many mixed, like, I don't want to say feelings. Like, I can see it going so many directions. Like, I don't know if that runs, like, the different scenarios run through your mind too, guys. Like, all right, well, what if Swayman next year has just like better defense out in front of him with a healthy Lindholm and McAvoy and what they put together? Like, maybe he starts getting on track then. Maybe it takes an off season of work that he puts in a lot and looks better from the start and doesn't get a slow start. Like, there's just different scenarios where you can see a lot of different things going his way for it to work out. But then there's this fear of, like, is it going to be the same as last year? And is the contract going to look really bad? And even if you do add, say, Mitch Marner or good free agents, and he can't, and Swayman can't perform, you still may end up in the same spot you were this year.
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to be better, right? I'm kind of pointing out what would be a worst case scenario, which is he continues to slide through his non-protected phase of his contract, where now all of a sudden you're stuck with them after this year, and no one's going to take him. I think even right now, like, if the Bruins wanted to trade him, no one would take him, but at that price tag. But yeah, I expect him to be better. I think hopefully playing. What did he play last year? 65 games, 63 games.
58, I think he ended up at.
Okay, so it didn't eclipse 60.
No.
Okay, but playing that share of the load, which he hadn't yet done, that should benefit him regardless of how the results were, right? He should be able to learn from that and acclimate to that workload now going forward, even though the Bruins management brass said at the end of the season that it's going to be more of a earn your net type situation. But you got my point. So I expect him to be better, and I hope for the Bruins' sake that he is. And Scott, I did want to touch on Locmelis, but did you have any final takeaways on Swayman?
No, not really. Just let's see how the rest of the tournament goes. He can still finish strong, and maybe it ends up just being one bad game, but or he just continues to struggle. So more to come there.
All right, let's talk about the Latvian superstar, shall we? The former UMass Minuteman, and he had 30.
Brian is kicking out Marat.
No,
John Locmelis
no.
is moving in.
Little do you know, Locmelis is in Kuzi Gang, so don't try to make a mountain out of a molehill. There's no conflict here.
You got those Eastern Europeans in the gang, right? And then Brian's the honorary member.
Exactly. So let's talk about him though, because at UMass, his sophomore season, I think he had 33 points in 40 games. Then he goes to Providence, short stint, 2 points per game in those 6 games he played. So then he goes to World Championships, and there was a point in time where I think he was tied for 6th in the tournament in scoring. I think that he's now dropped, but I don't think Latvia's played in, well, whatever. So he's got a point per game in the tournament so far.
Goals and an assist in 4 games is what he's got.
Yep. And when they played Team Canada, they played Team Sweden. If you see him in these games against those players, the Team Canada roster, it's not their Olympic roster because there's still some key players playing in the NHL playoffs. But as I said at the top of the podcast, that in mind, that Canadian roster was stacked and full of NHL stars and top players on their respective NHL teams. Locmelis makes a nice move around Macklin Celebrini, beats him up the ice. Nice assist there. Macklin Celebrini is obviously no slouch. He also led Latvia in ice time against Team Canada, and he's looked like he's belonged. And I think that isn't something that should be overlooked. So I'm not saying that he is going to be the next David Krejci as some have anointed him. I'm not going to say that. But what I'm saying is former 4th-round pick, you don't expect things of necessarily. But I think you watch him and then you try to picture, how would Fabian Lysell look in this situation? Or how would Matt Poitras look in this situation, being the go-to guy for his team, playing against Nathan MacKinnon and Sidney Crosby? Like, I just think that it shouldn't be overlooked what Locmelis has done in the last calendar year in his development. And I think that he is definitely a player that he has the skill, he has the speed, he has that. I think, as Scott said, he kind of has that dog in him. Like he's a very hardworking player, and I'm very interested to see what he does in training camp for the Bruins. I think that, hey, if Matt Poitras has the potential to make the team, if Fraser Minten has the potential to make the team, I don't see why Don Locmelis shouldn't have an opportunity to make the team. So he's a fascinating prospect to watch, and I just wanted to give him a quick shout out.
Yeah, his goals, he made some nice individual plays. And he looked really confident. And he's somebody that I know just from like talking to some of his college coaches, really is loves playing for his national team. And like it brings out certainly a higher level of competition in him. So, but he played well with the Providence Bruins as well when he finished his season at UMass and he integrated into the Bruins AHL team. He looked good there too. So certainly a lot of upside. I mean, he's somebody that if you can get him to continue his growth and like the trajectory looks like for him, you might actually have an NHL player there. So, and he's quick. He's a good playmaker. And he goes to the net, right? Like you'll find him either taking the puck to the net himself or he'll hang out there and he'll grab a rebound, and he's good in tight spaces. So he's got a skill set that if he's able to do, when this is the difficult part, this is what a lot of players can't do, but if he's able to do what he did in college at UMass, elevate it a little bit and find a way to do it in the NHL, like that's a good player. That's a point producer.
Yeah. So there's two things. Like, so first off, he at 21 years old is a player who's already had some pretty incredible international experience that players his age just don't have, because he is from a non-traditional power in Latvia, that when he plays there, even as a teenager, he was playing big minutes on the senior national team. In like he's already been through, in 2023, Latvia won bronze at the World Championships, and it was the first medal they had ever won at any international hockey competition. And they were like national heroes. Like people had the day off from work. There was like a major parade and celebration. And he was a 19-year-old on that team playing in the top 6. Like, that's pretty remarkable to have that on your resume. It's why I had no problem with him leaving Providence during their playoffs to go play in this tournament, because getting matched up against Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon is more, in my mind, more valuable than playing against the Charlotte Checkers. It stinks for Providence. He could have helped them in that series. They end up losing in 5 games. But this is really good for Locmelis. I saw like Sidney Crosby patted him on the back after the game, was like impressed with how he played. Like I saw,
Probably made his whole life.
Yeah,
probably just the coolest day ever.
Locmelis had a quote in Latvian, so I think it was translated, but basically he was like confused, like he didn't know what was going on, or like why Sidney Crosby was talking to him. Yeah, all that's great, and like my opinion of Locmelis is definitely rising since UMass's season ended and he turned pro. The production in Providence, even a very small sample, is hard to ignore. His play at World Championships is notable for sure. I'm really interested to see like where he goes and what he becomes, because the production at UMass, like, it was solid, but it's not great. Like I think like 0.67 points per game. Like players with that kind of production in college, and he was Bridgers. He was a sophomore this year, right? As a 21-year-old, like generally players with that kind of production at the college level at that age, it doesn't translate into being a scorer in the NHL. So like in my mind, I was like, yeah, okay, he might be a bottom 6 guy, and that still might just be his ceiling, which I don't say is a bad thing. Like I think I do feel like some fans are maybe getting a little too far ahead of things on Locmelis. Like I saw our friend Bruins Network, Anthony, at Bruins Network on Twitter, Anthony tweeted out yesterday, kind of comparing him to Danton Heinen, who produced more in college. And the responses were like, well, I guess he's a bust then, or like, that's disappointing to hear. And I'm like, it seems a little crazy to me that like there's people just assuming he's going to be a better NHLer than Danton Heinen. In my mind, I'm like, if Danton Locmelis turns into Danton Heinen, you should be really happy. Like,
they're different. They're different players, though, too. I mean,
yeah, but I think
center,
it meant more in terms of production. Like, can he be like a 45 point guy? I think you'd be thrilled with that. Like that's higher than what I would have thought possible for him even a month ago.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think people are starting to get a little too high. Where like they're starting to think he's going to be a top 6 guy, and maybe he is if he really continues building and like takes his game another several levels. But like I just want to slow that down a little bit because I don't really think people should be viewing him as like a bona fide top 6 guy. That's a little premature.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's premature to say that he's going to be like in the NHL for as long as Dan. Like Heinen has played so many games in the NHL. People might not realize it, but like if he was to play as many games as Heinen has played, that would be a massive success. I mean, this is a kid that wasn't guaranteed any games in the NHL, and obviously has not played any games in the NHL as his college career has just wrapped up. But I mean, yeah, the bar, and I feel like I understand where people are wanting to get excited for somebody that comes onto the scene, and like the rookie development has been rough in Boston. So they're like, oh, maybe this one, like every single time it's like, maybe this one, maybe this one, maybe this. So they want to think there's a guy that has that higher upside, and maybe they've been watching Locmelis and they've been excited by how he's played. I think it's a positive sign, but still obviously plenty of time for development there and work to go into making sure that you can do the things that he's been doing pretty good at World Championships, Providence, and in college at UMass, and just try to get that to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he very well may start the year in Providence next year. I think obviously I could see the Bruins wanting him to have elongated pro experience before playing for Boston, and maybe that means an entire season. I have zero doubts in my mind he's going to be an NHL player. Absolutely zero. How good of a player he is, that obviously remains to be seen. But I also think that
he's a center. He's a
center, but his skills translate. I mean, Scott mentioned that players with his point production in college hockey don't typically end up being big point producers in the NHL. But I will also say there aren't many players coming from NCAA hockey and then a month later playing against Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon, where MacKinnon just finished an NHL playoff series and he's still in great hockey shape. I mean, that is not nothing to overlook. I mean, the moment did not look too big for him. And I just think that he was playing against solid, and again, some of the best NHL players on their respective NHL teams, and he didn't look out of place. I think that you can't say the same about some of the Bruins prospects that we've been talking about. I can't sit here and say Fraser Minton would have looked that good in world championships against those players, or Matt Patra or Fabian Lysell. Like, I don't want to, and I'm not saying you guys are discrediting him, but there's a fine line between like anointing him as the next David Krejci, but also just, I think you have to assess what we've seen. And what I'm looking at right now is a player whose skills translate at the pro level. And that is just something that is not, you can't take for granted, because some players, they pop in college hockey and that doesn't happen. Now, obviously the sample size in the pro level for him is brief to this point, whether it's Providence and even World Championships. Like World Championships, it's a great field this year, all things considered. But it's not. It's on a bigger sheet of ice. It's not the North American style of play. So I am tempering those expectations as well a little bit. But I do think I like to know. I think I know an NHL caliber player when I see one, and I absolutely see that in him. I'm not sure if it's going to be in October, but if he is not an NHL player at some point in his career, I'll be blown away. And for a fourth rounder, that's not a guarantee. I don't look at him as a fourth rounder anymore. I look at him as, I think he's one of the better prospects Boston has in their system right now. If not, maybe their top prospect. That might change come June 27th. I'm sure it will. But I think of the field right now, of the Bruins prospects that are on the cusp of being pro ready, I think he's in the conversation with Patra and Fraser Minton.
Yeah, he's got a lot of hustle, and he gets to pucks first. Like, he wins puck battles, and that's one of the things that's, those are positive attributes you could see translating. Like, he's always willing himself to win puck battles, and he's got some good speed, and yeah, I mean, there's certainly something to be excited about. So we'll continue to watch the World Championships and watch his progress if he does anything else. There's other guys.
Sorry, Bridget, just real quick. Like when I watch him, like Georgi Merkulov is a guy who had a lot of point production in Providence. And I watched him and I said, yeah, I just don't know if it's going to translate because he doesn't have NHL breakaway speed and doesn't have great size. But like those little things, like I watch Locmelis and I don't have those concerns with him. And so like if he goes to Providence next year and does really well, like I'm not going to have the same skepticism with him as like a Georgi Merkulov, because I just see it train. How would Georgi Merkulov have looked if he was the top forward for Latvia playing against McKinnon and Crosby? He wouldn't have noticed them. And I'm not trying to say that Locmelis was the best player on the ice in that game. What I'm saying is he belonged. And that is saying that with those guys on the ice, it says a lot about a 21-year-old kid playing on a, not a great international hockey team.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that like he played wing in Providence on a line with Patra. So yes, he's a center by nature, but he could also play wing. At some point, the Bruins are going to need some wings. So that's an option.
That describes 10 of their forwards, Scott. Someone who can play center and wing.
He played low. He played like net front / bumper on the power play for UMass too. Like he'd play low. A lot of times he'd be playing low, close to the net, but he would pop into the bumper sometimes. And so like he was somebody that they leaned on their weird all forward power play unit.
All right. Any final takeaways from anything we discussed so far? We appreciate you all bearing with us so far. It's been just over an hour and 20 minutes. It's amazing how long these off-season episodes go. There's sometimes more to talk about than in the middle of the season. Bruins lost to the Devils 4-1. What do you want to talk about?
I know, well, especially like while we get like playoffs and world championships going on, it's like we can just bounce around. And, I feel like during the season, it's like, it's easy to just, hey, what's the most recent thing that happened? And now it's like we were texting yesterday, like just show planning. And I was like, just like rattling off like 5 things that are just kind of bouncing around my head. And I'm like, I don't know if any of these are even all that interesting, but like, I don't know, they're worth bringing up, I guess.
And we touched all of them, I think. So.
I think so. Let me see. Is there anything I wanted to?
Oh, the Utah Mammoth.
Oh, logo. The jerseys.
Yeah, no,
we
I don't think we have enough time, but
the Mammoth.
We'll save that. EA Sports generic logo for another time.
Bridget likes the logo, so I think we're gonna have a fight.
Oh boy.
I love the logo. I don't love the jersey. Sorry, spoiler alert for the episode for next episode. I love the logo.
I have complicated thoughts on the logo. How's that for a tease?
Okay. All right. Well,
everyone's just waiting with bated breath to hear my take on the Utah Mammoth logo.
Well, next week
that I already gave on Twitter, by the way.
Next week we should say now that we do have something unique planned for next week's episodes. Maybe we'll tease it. maybe we'll save it for when we actually start recording. Maybe we'll tease it online or something. But we'll have a couple of episodes next week that are not our traditional style, and it's not a mailbag or anything like that. So how's that for a tease, Scott? Was that a good enough
There
tease?
you go. Nailed
I
it.
think so.
All right, good. I don't even know what it is. So I just teased myself. All right. Thank you all very much for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.